Here with Drew Briese, Center College, but world champ now, 15U manager for USA Baseball, and center grad, but you're at Birmingham Southern for a little bit too. But Drew, thanks for jumping on with me.
Yeah, Ryan, thanks for having me today. I'm excited for it.
Congrats. So huge summer. USA Baseball is crushing it right now. It's a huge summer for USA Baseball.
It sure has been. Started out with the 12U in Taiwan, winning a gold medal, and we were lucky enough with the 15U team last week to follow up with another gold medal in Mexico, and now the 18U team is in the middle of their pool play in the 18U World Cup down in Florida, and they're undefeated as well. So it's been a good summer for USA.
Is that the cool thing about being in Cary because you kind of get to hang out with everybody?
It's one of the cool things. I mean, the number of cool things are almost innumerable. But it's a lot of fun to get to know the guys from the other staffs. You have some crossover if you're on a task force, maybe with one of them. We're down there in Mexico over the last couple of weeks and getting messages for guys that work with the 18U team and the manager for the 12U team and yeah, just a lot of people have your back no matter what you're doing.
What drew you to USA Baseball? It was 2013, correct? It was your first year
Yeah.
with USA Baseball.
Yeah, so one of my former players was actually involved with USA at the director level. So Brooks Webb, who's now the general manager for Tim Corbin's Vanderbilt baseball team, was the director for the 15U national team with USA in 2013, and just asked me one summer if I'd be interested in doing some scouting with them. And it was down in Jupiter at what used to be called the East Championships, which was a feeder program into the national teams. So that's where I started. I started by scouting in Florida, just trying to give my evaluation of guys and give recommendations to USA on guys that might be fits for the national team.
And does that help? Probably helps being on the scouting side of that first, kind of know what it looks like, and then be able to follow those guys and see kind of their progress as they work through the system.
There's no doubt about it. I think the national team concept is so different than anything else that we have in our game, whether you're talking about playing at the high school level or what a Division III guy looks like versus a Division I, or a high draft versus a Division I. You can kind of get those concepts if you're around the game enough. What a national team player looks like at each level it's really hard to identify. So starting on the scouting side and having the ability over the course of several years to figure out what that looked like, what are the skill sets at each age group that are going to allow a player to eventually play for a national team. It's a big bonus to be able to then turn over to the coaching staff and then know what we're looking for from those guys.
And you probably understand better than anybody now that maybe a 12U kid may not make the 15U team, a 15U kid may not make the 18U kid, and the amount of development that goes in those 6 years from a 12-year-old to an 18-year-old.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And the 12-year-old roster, we're aware each year of those kids that are age eligible for the 15U national team. So, on the 20-man team this year in Mexico, we had two of the 18 who were on the 12U national team. And things change. Things change a lot. I worked with the 14-year-olds last year in 2021, kind of in anticipation of working with the 15-year-olds this year. And just the jump some of those guys made from age 14 to 15 was outstanding. And I can point to one young man in particular, Coy James, who's from North Carolina and was with the 15U national team last year at team trials as a 14-year-old. Kind of was in the middle of the pack last year at trials, wasn't necessarily the most outstanding player. We were really glad that he was going to be age eligible to come back this year, but weren't really sure what we were going to get out of him. And then he comes back this year and just blows up at trials, has a great trials, makes the team. We stick him in center field and in the leadoff spot, and he's the MVP of the World Cup, 14 or 12 months after not really being sure what we were going to have from him.
Yeah, it seemed like him and Ethan Holiday kind of carried the load for you guys a little bit offensively.
Yeah, Ethan had a great tournament. Even his outs were loud. I mean, it was amazing how many barrels he had that just found their way into gloves. But I think I'd be hesitant to say it was just a two-man show. Like they were definitely in the middle of it. But there were other guys that really produced along the way as well. I mean, Andrew Costello was a DH catcher from Pennsylvania, and Andrew made the All-World team. Hit over 400, had 2 home runs in the tournament. Brady Ebel, third baseman from California. And, Brady didn't quite have the home run and RBI numbers, but his on base percentage was through the roof. He had double digit walks. And I mean, those guys hitting at the top of the order really set everything up for success for the bottom of the order to come through. And you had guys that were just contributors all the way. Brady Murrieta, with the catching that he did and what he did offensively, it was really a team effort all the way through.
The thing that stuck out in the highlights is how physical you guys were. And you look and you're like, man, those kids don't look like they're 15 years old, but that's the thing that stuck out was just how physical that team was.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Each year, you're not really sure what the profile of the team is going to be. I've seen some 15-year-old teams before that are maybe smaller, and they're a little quicker, and they're maybe more defensive oriented, and they're going to play the short game. They're going to bunt. They're going to run. And then I've seen years where you'd have the big horses, the big corner guys and the power arms. And we were a little bit of a mix of that this year, I would say. But yeah, there were definitely some times when I went to the mound for a visit, and I was looking up at a 6'2", 215 pound, 15-year-old. So I think it also helps just physically in terms of what the ask is over the course of the month. So just to give you a breakdown on that, the kids came into Arizona on August 13th, and we started team trials that evening. The World Cup ended on September 4th in Mexico. And there weren't too many days over that, whatever that is, 3.5 week time frame when the temperature was under 100 degrees. So physically, the ask of these young men to work out in the morning, play a game in the evening, and do it time and time again in some really tough weather conditions over the course of a month is tough. So having the physical guys really helps out with that.
With only 20 guys and you were 8-1 in the tournament with 20 guys. How many of those guys are dual guys for y'all?
We ended up with, I want to say out of the 20, 13 could step on the mound for us in some capacity. And I think 6 of those were pitcher only. So I think we had seven dual position pitcher type players. And having that depth and flexibility was really a key to this team, and part of the makeup that we chose intentionally with it. Like you were saying, 20 man roster, 9 games over the course of 9 days or 10 days it can wear you out a little bit. So you try and pick and choose guys that are going to have some flexibility to move around and to do some different things. A great example is Ryan Harwood, who closed out the gold medal game for us and pitched the night before against Cuba, and pitched in a big spot in the international tiebreaker for us against Panama. Ryan's a first baseman by trade, plays some outfield, big left-handed hitter, has some power. And we made the conscious decision about halfway through the tournament that we were going to limit his time at first base so that he would be fresh at the end of games. And, we were lucky enough to have some depth to put some other first basemen in there and make him highly effective, or give him the opportunity to be highly effective at the end of games. So that flexibility was key for this club.
After you beat Cuba, how soon till you knew you were going to play them again?
Immediately. We knew if we won that night on Saturday night against Cuba, we would have one loss, they would have one loss, and that would set us up to have a rematch in the gold medal game. So we knew immediately that we were going to play them for the gold medal, 5 p.m. Sunday evening, and that we would be the home team by virtue of having the head-to-head win against them.
Did you say much to the guys after you beat them the first time? Because I know the second day was a little bit tighter, but did you say much to those guys trying to get them ready to go? It's hard to beat somebody twice in 2 days, but did you say much to them?
We honestly didn't talk about the opponents very much at all during the course of the tournament. We gave some scouting reports, and we were able to pull some video on the opponent's starting pitchers that we were able to distribute throughout the course of the day leading up to a game. But as far as like talking about, game plan against Cuba and how we might have handled that in the gold medal game, it was much more along the lines of this game has been what we've prepared for over the course of a month. The challenge of playing in a hostile environment, the challenge of playing with a gold medal on the line. And those are more of the things that we talked about rather than how we were going to necessarily go out and game plan to beat Cuba. We were the most talented team there. I kind of felt that from the very beginning. And if we went out and played our game, threw strikes, took care of the baseball, put together quality at bats, there wasn't much chance for anybody to beat us. We had to find a way to beat ourselves.
Rounding out your staff, just a really good staff on the 15U team. Just talk about your staff a little bit.
Yeah, so our pitching coach, Rob Shabansky, is head coach at Gateway Community College out in Arizona. Chubbs and I have been working together for a number of years. When I was with the national team in 2016 as an assistant coach, Chubbs was the pitching coach on that team. So Mike Strickland from Marist School was the manager. Jason Maxwell from Ensworth was an assistant coach, and Chubbs and I were on that staff. We won the bronze medal in Japan that year, and it's always been a little bit of a bitter taste, I guess I would say, for 6 years kind of sitting there. And so for Chubbs and I to have a little bit of a redemption tour to come back and win the gold medal was really special. And I value his friendship. He's a tremendous coach. I really asked two things of him this summer. One was, just take care of the pitchers, call the pitches, put us in position to win. And I think he's probably one of the best game planners, scouting report writers that I've ever known. And so he took care of a lot of that for us and shouldered that burden. But can't say enough about him and the work he did and how appreciative I am of him for a personal and professional relationship. Steve Butler, I've known since 2014, I think. We've worked scouting task force together with USA. We have worked NTDP together. We've worked 15U trials together. And when the opportunity came to have him on staff, the first word that came to mind was just trust. We've worked together for so long. I trust him to make great decisions with the team and, kind of put us in position to be successful. So I knew I wanted to stay in the dugout and be able to work offense and defense all the time. So when it was like, well, who's going to coach third? That idea of trust just went straight to Butler. So he's a high school guy from Egan High School up in Minnesota, does a great job with them and was blessed to have him with our staff this year. And then Jeff Sherman is from Marcus Flower Mound down in the Dallas area in Texas. And he was slated to be on staff the last couple of years with Jared Halpert as the manager from Harvard Westlake. And I was lucky enough to be working scouting task force and trials with Jeff in preparation for the 2020 and 2021 15U national team, neither of which took off because of COVID. And really got to know him and trust him, especially with his offensive approach, his ability to handle hitters, to be able to talk to them about, game planning for a certain pitcher, what to look for in this situation, how to handle adversity. He's tremendous in that aspect. And I knew I kind of wanted to have that so-called offensive coordinator there to help us out this year. And he did an awesome job.
Hey, are you managing from the dugout at center also?
I am. So it's something that over the last couple of years, I've really gotten comfortable with. Especially in the World Cup environment or in an environment where, like we were talking about earlier, with the number of dual players that you have and pieces that you have to move, I try to stay 2 and 3, moves ahead of that. Not always am I successful with it, but I think being in the dugout helps me a lot more with that. And then being able to talk to guys on deck and, I'll ask them, given this certain situation, do you like sack bunt here? Do you like hit and run? What do you want to go drag to kind of see where their head is and to be able to evaluate what we want to do offensively moving into the next situation.
How much difference is international play for those 15-year-olds than what they're used to playing?
I think it's hugely different. It's you know I don't mean to bag on travel baseball. It is the lifeblood of a lot of what we do, but I think we all know that those tournaments in the course of the weekend can be very stagnant. They can be very static. They can lose a little bit of edge, even when you get to the ring games or the medal games on Saturdays and Sundays. The environment playing internationally is so different than anything they experience, where we prepare them for the scenario where the crowd is going to be against them, actively cheering for the other team. And it doesn't matter who it is. They may be actively cheering for South Africa. They may be actively cheering for Cuba in the gold medal game, but the crowd is generally going to turn against them. And it's kind of weird to see the gold medal game where I think the Czech team and the French team, it seemed like everybody was cheering for Cuba in the stands, except for like our people, our parents, and my wife and kids who were there. So we prepare them for that. We prepare them for umpires who are going to shrink the zone, and it happened a lot. It happened a lot where our stuff, I think, was probably a little bit tough on the umpires, and the zone shrunk up. The chatter that you hear from the other dugout, the competitive nature of the international teams, it's nothing like they see domestically. So it is quite a bit different. And I think, our 15-year-olds, our young people walk away from it saying, man, that is a style of baseball I could get used to playing every week.
Yeah. Yeah, what are the keys to getting the best players in the country together, but then getting them to play as a team?
Well, I'll take that in two separate questions, if that's all right. In terms of getting them together, man, it takes an absolute village. So I can't point enough to the administration with USA Baseball, everybody from the director level with Ashley Bratcher and Will Schwarber, to the task force guys that are working in Arizona and in North Carolina to identify the players, all the way down to the intern level, people who are just bought into this idea of we need to, kind of complete this mission, find the best players, get them together in the same spot, feed them, house them, get them on the same path. That takes an absolute village, and USA does an outstanding job of putting people in position to help with that. As far as getting them on the same page, for me, it was something I've been thinking about over the course of the last year a lot. And it really comes together in that first meeting when you have the 20 of them together after they've gone from 72 players down to 34 players. And now you have 20 guys sitting in a room who are like, well, this is it. These are the people that are going to go and play for the gold medal. So I chose my words very carefully in that meeting. And I remember at trials last year when I was a trials coach, I was there to provide evaluation and support, but writing down the phrase create the vision in that first meeting. And that's what I wanted to sell. So the vision was really simple because I didn't want to overcomplicate it. And it was something that we could remember every day that we were down there. And it was this idea of complete the mission or one mission. And everything that we did, from the way that we were in a classroom setting, to the way that we listened and performed in a training setting, to the food we ate, to the way we slept, needed to support this mission of winning a gold medal. And that's what I threw out there at him, that we were going to have an intense 3-week episode of everything that we did performance-wise affecting this ability to go and complete this one mission. So that's how we tried to get them on the same page. I think that they really bought in and wanted to follow through with it. And even in times of adversity, like when we lost to Japan, we knew that mission was still there for us to complete. And we got right back on track with it.
Was there much difference between this year's team and the 2016 team?
It's hard. It's hard for me to look at it, just being the manager this year, having much more experience with it this year. It's hard for me almost to remember what it was like with that club, almost from an assistant coaching standpoint. Definitely some different personalities, both really highly skilled in terms of the players that were there. When you're talking about guys like Anthony Volpe, first round draft pick, who was our shortstop with that team. Some real similarities with them, but really hard for me to evaluate from. I think it's just such an insider viewpoint of this one from creating it with my own hands and my own mind. Basically, the other one I was there in more of a support role, I guess I would say.
That's probably the biggest difference from going and being an assistant to head coach, isn't it? You take so much more of the environment and everything that's going on because you have to worry about all things that are going on.
Yeah, it was definitely a different role, and I can't thank guys like Mike Strickland and Jason Maxwell and Chan Brown enough for their guidance and support. Jared Halpert, for you kind of saying, "Hey, man, here's some things you need to think about," and it could be anything from putting together a scouting task force to trials coaches to handling personalities to selling that vision, that really helped me to pave the way and say, okay, this is how we're going to do this. So yeah, it's quite a bit different, and USA does a great job of allowing the coaching staff to have a great deal of input. What do we want to do in this certain situation? How do we want to handle trials when we're not in North Carolina, with trials being in Phoenix? What do you want the schedule to look like? Where do you want to play? When do you want to have games? How many exhibitions do you want to play? I mean, all that stuff that goes into it that honestly, like at the very beginning when they made the ask, I didn't anticipate that. But kind of like we talked about earlier with baseball coaches, man, we're ready to problem solve and get to the bottom of stuff. So I was really grateful that they allowed me to have that much input through the whole process.
Talked about nutrition. Did you have to change much with a 15-year-old? I mean, you're dealing with a 15-year-old kid, so maybe don't always eat the best. Did you have to change much for those guys from a nutrition standpoint?
Well, I think the number one thing is just hydration, right? When you're in Arizona and Mexico for a month in August, you have to basically force hydration on them, and they took to that really well. Like I don't know that we had a ton of cramping or hydration issues along the way. And then you try and meet them halfway. You know that they want their Chick-fil-A, they want their Uber Eats, and then you also try to make sure that we are doing what's good for us in the long run, and things that are going to fuel us. And then you have other considerations like we're in Mexico. The World Baseball Softball Confederation handles everything from the games to the umpires to the lodging to transportation to meals from the time you set foot in the tournament. So they handled all of our meals. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner were set up in a kind of cafeteria style ballroom at the hotel in Mexico. And so it's a whole lot of tortillas and rice and beans and chicken for a couple of weeks on end. And you make the best of it. And you encourage them, the players to make the best of it too.
You said did Rob call every pitch?
He called every pitch. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Probably have to at that point, right? Just limited prep time for the opponents, knowing what your guys' strengths are. Probably have to do it that way, don't you?
For me, it goes back to that whole idea of trust. Like I really, really trusted him to, know our pitchers, know what their strengths were, and like the last two outs of the gold medal game, we bring in Harwood to relieve, and he's sitting 87 to 90, and bases are loaded. We're up by one. The strike zone got really, really small, and he called 8 fastballs in a row for 2 strikeouts, and it took a little bit of guts to just say, "Hey, man, here comes number one, come and get it." But that's why I trusted him with those pitch calls, because he knows exactly what to do in those situations.
Does starting on the high school side help? I mean, you've dealt with 15-year-old kids because you started on the high school side. Does it help?
I think so. Honestly, when the conversation first came up about, being the manager, I was like, "Are you sure?" Like I'm a college guy. I've been a college guy basically for like 18 years. I coach, 18 to 22-year-olds, and I have a ton of experience with the 15U national team. but I don't necessarily coach those guys every day. And what really helped was talking to the high school guys that are some of the best coaches in the country. I mean, you take professional, college, high school, the Jason Maxwells of the world, who I called them like, hey man, this could happen. What do you think? And am I ready to do this? And he was like, man, you are the perfect guy for this. There's no doubt. He's like, I deal with these kids every day. You would be just fine with them. So talking to a lot of the high school guys that I really know and trust helped to build up my confidence in taking on this age group.
Well, and coaching elite in any age group probably makes things a little bit easier, doesn't it? Because they do things different than the other kids.
They do. And with that comes a whole new way of communicating with them and talking to them about expectations. And, you know, I think there's a fine edge of it. They can do so much and they're so big and they're so talented that naturally you almost think of them as more of college type players. And then you remember, you see something that or you hear them talking about something in the cafeteria where you're like, oh yeah, no, they're 15. And so you handle their egos and you handle them in terms of their personalities, like they're young, like they're the young men that they are. And so there is that delicate balance for sure.
I mean, is that a concern going into international play where maybe they might fail for the first time? I mean, you got elite of the elite, and with any age group, they may fail for the first time. Is that a concern for some kids, or does that get weeded out in the selection process where okay, kid's fairly mentally tough, he might get handed to him, he's going to be okay?
You hit the nail right on the head right there. That's the perfect scenario where we're in team trials, and maybe the umpire's zone shrunk up a little bit. Maybe he didn't get that strike that he was really counting on. As a hitter, maybe he struck out at a pitch looking that was in the channel and it was two balls off. How is he going to handle that? What's that going to look like in his next at bat? So we really try to evaluate it there and see how that may play on the international stage. And the great part about team trials is that this year we had 12 coaches there, and you're able to evaluate everything from the physical skill set to what they're like in the dugout after they handle that adversity, or they see that bit of adversity. And you're getting feedback from those guys who are talking to them in the dugout and getting that initial reaction. And so part of making the decision on who is going to go forward and play on the national team is who has the skill set, but also who can handle the failure that's going to happen at the international level.
What'd you learn from Jan Weisberg?
Man, he is a close friend. He's a mentor. He was my neighbor for like 8 years. Our wives are really good friends. Our sons are the same age. He's the godfather to my daughter. I'm the godfather to his son, his youngest. He's a very, very special person in my life. I think the things that I learned from Jan were, number one, how to work. I had a vision for what it meant to be as to what it would look like to work as a coach, and he's really nonstop with his work ethic. It is 24/7, 365. What are we doing to get better? And I really bought into that, and and it helped to push me forward, I think, into a whole new place in my career. And then how to handle competitiveness. I'm a very competitive person by nature. Jan is a very competitive person by nature. I think even in my mid-20s, I was probably somebody who would let his emotions get the best of him, and let that competitive fire burn a little bit too brightly at times. And I think he really helped me to understand how to channel that into coaching, channel that into your players, channel that into teaching, channel that into long-term vision and progress. So those are the two things I would really point to with him in terms of work ethic and competitiveness that I take away and think about all the time. But very special man, a great friend. We still talk every week.
Did you run into, was he at Kentucky when you were getting your master's at Kentucky? Did you run into him there at all?
I never ran into him at UK. I was there. We were there at the same time. But our first interaction was just a cold call when he took the head coaching job at Transylvania, and I was looking to get in the college realm. I just called him and said, "Hey, man, I know you coach catchers at UK. I coach catchers. If you need somebody that can handle that for your new staff, come on in." And he invited me to come in for a 30-minute meeting. I think we met for like an hour and a half, and here we are, whatever, 17 years later, and we're great friends.
What's it mean to be back at center?
Being back at center has been a ton of fun. It's a unique opportunity for me and my family to grow up in the place where my wife and I met and we grew up. So going into year 7 here, I've been given the great opportunity to build this program and to take on the task of having a brand new $6 million baseball facility. So we're really well supported here. The administration wants and expects success from us, and that's the type of environment I want to be in. So Danville and Boyle County are a great place to call home. I can't imagine raising my young daughters anywhere else right now. So it's been a very special place for us to come back, and kind of the way that I look at it is my wife and I had a great start to our baseball career at Birmingham Southern, and then the challenge of coming back to center is the next big one in our career. So we're tackling that one head on.
How are you balancing your USA duties then with summer recruiting?
It's tough, man.
Yeah.
I'll be really honest with you. I
I
have
think
to
about
shout.
it every time I see you guys over in Cary. I'm like, this isn't their full time gig. They got other responsibilities also.
Yeah, and I can't say enough about my our assistants here, Ryan Gaines, who's our pitching coach, and Taylor Valentine, who's our assistant coach, and the work that they did this summer to support not only our baseball program at center, but to support USA baseball. They both knew how important this was for me to, be able to go to Arizona for a week and then go spend 10 days in North Carolina and then go down to Hoover for a couple of days and then go to trials and the World Cup for almost a month. So they handled almost all of our recruiting efforts this summer. And again, both because they want center to be successful, but also because they wanted us to go win a gold medal. So I can't say enough about that. In a normal year, it's a lot easier because I'm usually gone for, a week here, 5 days here to go and be on a scouting task force, and we can balance that out with our assistants. But this year was definitely a tall order for everything. I mean, I missed birthdays, I missed 2 vacations, I missed recruiting, I missed everything this summer for USA baseball, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But we knew this one was going to be a tall order.
I love Taylor. He and I go back to Midwest winter camp days, back in the
Yeah,
old days. So I love Taylor. He's a grinder. He gets after it.
he does, man. And I'm going to tell you, there is probably nobody outside of Cary who was more fired up for that gold medal than he was. I mean, it was text message every day, go get him. Text message after the game, how'd you feel about it? How did things go? He is center baseball through and through, and he is USA baseball through and through.
Is this a normal? You're starting fall ball later. Is that normal for you guys, or is it because of what you did this summer?
It's twofold. One is definitely because of the summer. So I got back to the States on September 6th and wanted to have about 3 weeks before we jumped into fall ball. So we're going to start on October 1st. But two, having our new all turf facility allows us to push back a little bit later, so our guys can kind of have some open batting practice times, some open field times during September, and then we don't really have to worry about any weather or anything while we go through our month of fall ball in October. So if it goes well, I could totally see doing this in the future, regardless of the USA schedule. So the new facility is definitely a big piece of it as well.
Did we get the COVID schedule back for you guys? Because I know guys kind of liked the flexibility of the COVID fall schedule. Did you guys get that back? I forgot to look.
No, so we're back to the 16 date, regular NCAA schedule for fall ball. There are some policies in the works. People are talking about changing it to number of days throughout the course of the year, but we're back to a standard calendar for this year.
Smaller roster size, is that by design for you guys? I think you had, 31 or 32 on your roster last year. Is that by design?
Not necessarily. It was just kind of a byproduct of where we were. This year, we welcome 15 fresh faces to campus. So we'll be back at that 40 range going into the spring. Um, yeah, so it was more just kind of a byproduct of where we were, but we'll feel a lot more comfortable going to this year with a slightly bigger roster. And with, just as an aside, Center has such a massive study abroad program that we'll miss 6 of our players who are going to study abroad in France for the entire fall semester. So when you have 40 guys on the roster, that definitely helps to balance out the folks who are studying abroad.
You long time catching guy. I mean, are you in with some of the new stuff out? Is it still traditional, hybrid? How are you coaching your catchers?
Yeah, I would say it's hybrid. It's more of like I'm going to introduce some things to you in terms of stance and glove patterning that would, probably be called newer school. And then I'm going to see how you work with it and then talk to you about what you're most comfortable with and then see where we go from there. I think the adjustability has to be there. Even working with the young catchers that we had in the World Cup, they're more new style where it's a lot of one knee down, glove to the ground, pattern outside the zone to inside the zone. And I think when you are catching guys that are quote unquote easier to catch, they're 76, 78, that glove patterning and stance can work for you. We saw a couple of these guys when it was 88 to 90 and the stuff is a little sharper. That long movement with the glove got big and they got beat to the spot. So we had to make some shifts and changes like in the middle of trials to change some things with these guys. And they took to it really well. So, they were able to I guess work into that hybrid world pretty well. So I'm gonna see what you do, see what you like, and try to work with you on what works best and feels best.
Did you work more high velocity machine with those guys to help them get ready for the higher velocity, the arms they were going to see?
We didn't do a ton. Honestly, when you get into the trials setting, I would love to say that there's a lot of time for like player development and NDD and that type of stuff. And man, it's really like you're trying to steal 20 minutes here or 20 minutes there for some NDD. And so the time is very limited to introduce new ideas and really like see them through the long run. So it's more a matter of evaluation of what's going on in bullpens or what's going on in game, and then being able to work simple glove pattern changes from there, or for a hitter to work an adjustment or an approach change from at bat to at bat. It happens really quickly. A 2.5 hour workout in the morning goes like that, and all of a sudden you're playing a game in the afternoon. So the player development time, at least with the national team, is really limited.
For a catcher that is struggling to handle the speed, were you just getting their glove closer to the strike zone on
Yes.
presentation?
Yeah, that was the number one thing with Andrew Costello is a great young catcher, and I think he's probably one of the top 5 players in his class. But he was struggling a little bit with the maybe the velocity, maybe the spin, maybe the timing of it all. I'm not exactly sure, but we just took the pattern out from dropping all the way down to the ground, to really just kind of settle in a nice relaxed hand out by his knee, whatever stance he was in, and working the pattern more from the bottom of the zone than from the ground.
Have you felt like the hitters have finally caught back up to the pitchers a little bit offensively?
In the college world or just
Yeah.
in general?
Yep, college world.
Yeah, it seems to be. I mean, I guess you would look at some of the numbers and say, the home runs are back, compared to what they were in the first year, second year, maybe of BB core. Are the balls changing? Are the hitters catching up? Where are these things in terms of the evolution and the arms race that is offense versus defense in the college baseball world? But yeah, it seems like the offense is back compared to maybe what it was 10 years ago or so.
When you finally get going here in October, what are going to be the first things that you kind of implement defensively with your guys?
So we spend our fall really in 2 realms. One is the fundamentals realm, and the second is the competition realm. So we will, with being limited to 16 dates, we will spend a lot of time working the NDD, working the player development side of things, so that we do have our basic set of fundamental skills down. Our players know what the expectations are for them, and then we're able to hopefully improve on those throughout the course of the fall. And then the second realm is competition. So we'll spend a lot of time, NDD, Team D, and then we jump right into competition. So our first day of fall, we'll play an inter-squad scrimmage, and we'll jump into live pitcher versus hitter, and we'll have those every Saturday and Sunday throughout the course of our entire fall.
With those guys that go abroad, how long does it take them to get kind of back acclimated when they get back?
It's different for each guy. The beautiful part is they come back right after Thanksgiving. So, if you're talking about arriving back in the States the last week of November, you've got a month until Christmas, and then nearly another month until team practice starts in earnest. So, it's 6 to 8 weeks of build-up time, and if you do it right, you can help them kind of figure out that 8 week lead-up process. For pitchers, no problem. For hitters, the biggest thing that they miss is, those 40 at bats, 35 to 40 at bats in the fall. And so you just try to catch them up as much as possible over the course of their holiday time by, hey, is there a way you can get on a velocity machine? Are there any live at bats you can get versus hitters at home, or pitchers at home, and try to help them close that gap a little bit. But 8 weeks is generally enough lead up time where if they're ready to jump right into it, we can have them ready for team practice at the end of January.
Coaching Division III, a little more conducive to family life.
Than high school or Division One
Yeah,
or USA.
yeah, all three.
Well, it's really the only level that I've known in depth. I did high school for 1 year, and kind of at the end of that year, I knew that I was going to be more well suited for the college level. And then I've been coaching Division III college since 2005, 2006. So that's really all I've known. I have a lot of friends that have worked at high level, high schools, JUCOs, Division One, and it seems like our summers are a little slower than theirs. It seems like our breaks maybe a little bit slower pace than theirs at times. So for me, it fits well. I have a son who's playing college baseball right now, and would love the opportunity to see him play at some point, or at least follow along with him. I have two daughters who are involved with extracurricular activities, and I do everything I can to see them do their gymnastics and their soccer and swim and do all the things that they do. So Division III is definitely a good family atmosphere for the Briese family, at least.
Well, and Jan was in the meat grinder too. Like, I mean, he was in the SEC with the no rules SEC, where
Yeah.
no hours limitations, nothing. So like Jan was in that for a while.
He told me that the last summer at UK, I think he told me he was on the road for 82 of the 90 days in the summer. And so, for him, I think it took him a little while to get used to the Division III cycle and the way things worked a little bit. And maybe that's one of the reasons we were good for each other, is because I kind of knew what that looked like, and he pushed me to do a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, he did that for a long, long time at UK, and did that grind.
Do you have a fail forward moment? Do you have something you thought was going to sidetrack you, but looking back now was one of the best things that happened to you?
Oh, that's a good question, man. I think that when I was at Birmingham Southern, there were a couple times when I had interviewed for jobs. I was Jan's assistant for 10 years. We built a program that was a top 10 program, ranked number one in the country, on the doorstep of going to the College World Series, all started from scratch with no players. And so, there were some probably times in my seventh year, eighth year, when I was like, okay, I'm ready to be a head coach. And I had a job interview, and, I traveled to a place or two and actually sat down with ADs and went through the whole process and met college presidents, and didn't end up getting those jobs. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, like my life could have been a lot different if I had ended up at place A or place B. And looking back on it, I'm probably thankful that I didn't, and glad that I had the opportunity to be with him for a couple more years. And I think it made the opportunity to come to center that much more clear cut. That I was ready to take it on, ready for the challenge of taking over a program that needed a little bit of work, and it has set me up for a successful career here at Center.
You have any evening or morning routines that you like?
My morning routine is pretty simple. I take my kids to school every day. And I try to do it no matter what happens. So, there are times when we get back off the road from Jackson, Mississippi or Conway, Arkansas, and we're rolling back in at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I always try and be there to take my kids to school the next day. And it's something that for me, even those 10 minutes of just dropping them off, kind of gets my day started, gets me reconnected with them, helps me to understand the importance of being a dad. And yeah, kind of starts my day off. So that's something I actually look forward to every day.
I'm getting to
Uh,
take my 17-year-old daughter to high school now. She can't drive yet, and this is the first time I've done it because when we were in Macomb, my wife taught in the same school, so she drove them last year. My wife's schedule lined up with my daughter's, so they got to ride together. So I'm doing it this year. It's been great. She's trapped with me now for 15 minutes, which is great for me. I know she doesn't probably enjoy it that much, but it's great for me that my daughter gets trapped with me for 15 minutes in the morning.
It's funny, man. My wife has said it all along with my son, who's 19 now. But the time in the car, it seems to be some of the time when teenagers are more willing to open up, and maybe it's because they don't have that direct eye-to-eye contact, or you can ask them to put their phone away for a few minutes, but they're willing to talk about more stuff. And I'll be honest with you, most of the time in the morning, I'm pretty quiet, and I'm just trying to check in with my daughters on what they have during the course of the day. You have a test today, you have gymnastics this afternoon. But it's more just the idea of like being present with them, that really makes it good for me. So special times.
Where's Jack going to school?
He goes to Trinity University down in Texas, so he plays for Coach Scannell down there in
Saw
San
him at the World
Antonio.
Series last year.
Yeah, man, I gave him a hard time. I was like, "Hey, dude, I've been in college baseball for like 20 years. I've been to College World Series. You've been in it for 9 months, and you're going to the College World Series."
Was there ever thought that he'd come play for you?
I think early on we knew it wasn't going to be a fit, and he moved here when he was in eighth grade. Had a great high school career here in Boyle County, but knew that he wanted to go south. He wanted a little bit warmer. He knew that he wanted a place where he can make his own name and not be Coach Briese's son. And so he had to go 17 hours away to kind of get that, but he found it, and Trinity's a great home for him.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, man. Um, I tend to I tend to think about the people that I've been around in my career, and something that always sticks out to me is the brief time that I had with General Charles Krulak, who was the president at Birmingham Southern when I was there. He's the former commandant of the Marine Corps. He's a four-star general, and he's a Vietnam infantry veteran. Comes from a military family. He's about 5'7" and 160 pounds, and you wouldn't want to mess with him any day of your life. He's like 78 years old, but a great leader, a leader of people. And I remember really early on when he was with us at Southern, he told me and he told Jan, like, if you're going to be successful, you have to surround yourself with great people. And for me, I think my personality is I'll do it myself. I can handle this. I'm ready for it. I'm strong enough. I have the skill set. I'm smart enough to figure this all out. And in becoming a head coach, handling the things that we do here at Center, working with USA Baseball, the ability to lean on other people, the ability to ask questions of them, to value their input, to have them support the mission of whatever it is that needs to be accomplished. That's been something that's been really important for me to learn, and I think about that all the time. So whether I'm working with our assistants here with Ryan and with Taylor, or we're talking about our trials coaching staff and how we value their input with USA, surrounding yourself with good people in order to accomplish a task is a really important thing in life.
Learning to delegate's a huge skill, and it took me a long. I still have a hard time with that because same
Yeah,
thing. I'm used to doing stuff by myself, so that was a hard thing for me to develop, was being able to delegate, but also trust giving people our responsibilities also.
it's hard, isn't it, man? Because
Yeah.
like you said from the very beginning, we're talking about we're problem solvers. We can do this, we can do that. And so we figure out ways to do that stuff. But I guess the older I've gotten, the more I see like Jan trusted me to coach third base when I hadn't really done it before, and he had done it for all those years at UK, and wanted to give me that opportunity, delegate that task to me, and work with our hitters, and to go and do that. So when the time came for me to do that, it became a lot easier because I put myself in his shoes. Well, I wonder what he was thinking when he let me do that. I was 20 something. I didn't know anything about what was going on, but you see that other people do that, and I think it kind of helps you to plug along and to have that faith yourself.
That's a service piece because you want them to grow as a coach also. So sometimes you've got to step back and be like, okay, I've got to allow them to get on their path and develop skills too, because you want them to be successful going forward too.
Yeah, just that the knowledge of what did things like that do for me? How did that make me feel? How did that help me to develop my own skill set to see the game from a different vantage point? We have to do that with our young coaches. That's part of our responsibility, I think, as head coaches. So, it's easy to have Taylor coach third now. It's easy to have Gaines call pitches for us, and really that's freed me up to be a better game manager. And quite honestly, like circling back to USA, that was one of the things that I felt like I actually did well this summer, was just manage the games with everything that was going into it and all the moving pieces that we had. I was able to manage the games the way that I wanted to. But it was because of that trust I had in other people, and their ability to see their jobs through.
Have you ever gotten bad advice?
Ever gotten bad advice? Good question, man. Um, I'm sure I've gotten advice that, looking back at it, I probably veered off the path from it and decided to go on my own. But I think that's also part of life. We're the sum of our experiences, right? We are the people that we are because of what we've been through in the past. And so whether those are learning opportunities, some might call them failures, or their positive feedback experiences, hopefully you're learning something from all of it.
You have a favorite book?
Um, I go through a lot. Like I guess I wouldn't say I'm like an avid reader, but I bounce around from
I
book
am
to
all
book.
over the
But
map with what I read. I'm all over the
yeah,
map.
one that I revisit a lot is The Champion's Mind by Jim Afternow.
Love it. That was a team book of us for one year. It was great. I love that book.
Yeah, and I think there's so many parallels between just coaching in general, and then he kind of uses Olympic sports as an example for a lot of what he's talking about, which easily translates into the USA baseball stuff. Or that was one that I read in 2016, and then I revisited again this spring before I took off with USA again this summer. So that's one that jumps out to the front of my mind right now. But I probably got two or three that I'm jumping around from chapter to chapter in these different books.
That's one of my favorite things about the podcast is I get a chance to ask people stuff. So I'll pick up stuff. I'm reading the Lion Tracker's Guide to Life right now because a guest recommended it like 6 months. So I'll put it in, like when somebody recommends a book that I haven't read, I'll write it down and then I'll put it in my library checkout. And that one finally came around. It's a really small read. I just got into it, but it's good. It's really good.
I think that's one of the valuable things about relationships in this business is you can learn so much from them. Anything from X's and O's and strategy down to really what I would qualify as developing the mental side of your person and your game, and things like a reading list. So Shabansky and I were in a hotel for the last month, and we got to talking about books, and he was like, "Hey, do you know the Trevor Moawad?" And I was like, "No, I don't know him." And so he played a video for me, and then immediately that day I did exactly what you're talking about. I went and put in my Amazon checkout, it takes what it takes.
Yep.
So that got to my house on like Saturday, and I started reading it, and I'm halfway through it already.
And RIP, I mean, he passed away. I think it was last year, but his big thing is getting back to neutral, which I love.
I
If you
love
can,
it.
try to get back to neutral.
Yeah, and it was one of the funny things. Like once we started to talk about those things, I would actually see the characteristics in Rob in the dugout, like just being in neutral state. the whole time, positive thinking, negative thinking, neutral thinking. And I really saw that in his personality a lot, which intrigued me to go and get this book and to read it.
Do you have any tips, like when you're in the dugout and things start to get a little bit hot or tense? Do you have any routines that you use to try to get back to neutral?
No. I mean,
Breathing was about the only thing. The breathing techniques that I would teach our guys, that was about the only thing that I'm sure I probably came across sometimes because guys could see me like taking deep breaths, but I was trying to get myself back to a good place.
yeah, no, I mean, I wish I could sit here and say, man, I'm the example of cool-headedness in the dugout, but there have been too many clipboards that have suffered and stopwatches that have gone the way of the trash can, that my players would call me out if they heard me say something like that. I think the older I get, the more I try to look at it in terms of what do we need to do right now? Yes, that didn't go our way. We can't have it back. So what do we need to do to get things rolling again in our way? And then always creating a vision for your players of what could happen. So you're down 4-0, or yeah, 4-0, and it's the eighth inning and you haven't hit all day. What's the vision for how you can still win this game? Like that's something I try to get to a lot, is to, all right, how do we still create this idea of we're in this, we're a couple swings away, or we're one play away, or this is how we're going to do that, but selling that vision to them even in game. I won't say I'm great at it, but I try to think about those things. I will say, like, there was a real peace and a calm in the two Cuba games at the end of the World Cup. My parents texted me, my wife, and even some of my players were noticing, like, I was sitting in the dugout with my legs crossed, and they're like, who is this masked man? Who is this guy? And I think for me, as I get older, and hopefully USA is a learning experience for me, I knew that I did everything I could this summer to put our team in position to win a gold medal. And I was really at peace with it. So managing the game just became the only thing that I had to do. But it wasn't this high of, we're going to win. Oh no, we might lose. We're going to win. Oh no, we might lose. It was, we've done everything we can. Now I'm just going to try and help these guys to go out and play. So hopefully I can carry some of that over to center next year.
What are some final thoughts or something I should have asked you that maybe I didn't?
Oh man. Final thoughts for me would just be thankful to you and everything the ABCA does to help our profession along, from education to fellowship. I think you guys do an outstanding job, and I'm proud to say that I'm a member, actually re-upped again, just so you know. And yeah, can't thank you enough for all that. In terms of what to ask me, man, I don't think I really know a whole lot about anything. I know a little bit about a lot of things. So you did a great job, and I appreciate the time.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely.